Growing up in South Florida, I can tell you it becomes scorching in the summer. The temperature often exceeds 100 degrees and the humidity makes it unbearable. As a matter of fact, one time we were down in Florida, my wife and I were standing on the balcony of a hotel. She just put her makeup on and sweat is pouring down her face, makeup dripping. She says, "Don't you ever ask me to move to Florida." Okay. Now, what I'm going to share with you next made the summer of 1974 particularly sizzle. Not with heat, but with the news that maybe an alien probe had been found. The discovery was made right in Jacksonville, Florida, to be exact. And news of this discovery spread nationwide, generating numerous stories for everyone to speculate about, involving NASA and Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Remember him? Project Blue Book fame and possibly foreign government spies. Now let's look at the story, and you are welcome to share your thoughts in the comment section at the end of this video. I really would appreciate it. In March of 1974, a fire broke out at Fort George Island, one of the marshland islands off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, owned by the Betts family, where they grew trees for timber. Upon inspecting the smoldering brush, owners Anton and Jerry, along with their 21-year-old son Terry, noticed a spherical metal object among the burnt debris. It looked like a silver bowling ball, Terry said. When he went down to pick it up, he was surprised. He was amazed at how heavy it was, and that it looked completely unscathed, and it was very shiny even after the fire. Well, Terry carried it all the way back to his house. And when they got home, upon further inspection, they noticed the spear had no seams, no weld marks, no signs of machining or damage. They noticed what looked like a small triangle etched right into the corner section of it. They thought that initially the spear was a cannonball, maybe left by the New World conquistadores. Alternatively, they considered it possible that it might have been a piece of the Russian Sputnik satellite. In any event, Terry thought it was cool, so he put it in his bedroom and kept it as a souvenir. But what happens next leaves the world wondering about this spear that has become to be known as the Betts spear. Now, sometime later, Terry and a friend were in his bedroom jamming along on guitars, like you see back there on the wall. The ball reacted and emanated a strange throbbing sound, then started humming. And Terry said, "We stopped to listen." It faded away after a minute. He shrugged, maybe there's just something going on, and then the humming returned. Terry walked around his room, strumming the guitar. He soon realized that the spear would vibrate along with the notes he played. He played a little louder. Don't we all love loud guitar? The spear vibrated more powerfully and then started buzzing. Jerry Betts told the Palm Beach Post in April of '74, "There must be high frequency waves coming out from here. When we put our poodle besides the ball, she whimpered and put her paws over her ears." She said, "Once Terry gently tapped it with a hammer and the spear responded with ringing sounds. But it disturbed the dogs and he went and ran and hid under the table. Though nobody was touching the spear or even near it, it started to move on its own. When the spear was rolled across the ground, it would roll away, stop, vibrate, and then change direction. And then it would stop, vibrate, change direction again, and come back to the person who rolled it. Now that's freaky." Well, at first the Bettses thought it could be a gyroscope, which would account for the movement. When pushed, the ball would avoid falling and manage to climb up a slanted table to avoid falling off. Now that's freaky, right? Come on. So they put the spear on this coffee table that had a glass top, and when they pushed it, it would not fall off. It would roll around the edge of the table, then to the middle, and just stop. So, being like cautious people like they were, they lifted one end of the table to get it roll up onto the floor. But instead of rolling off, it rolled up the incline to save itself from falling off. I don't know what you think, but that would have me thinking twice. In a newspaper report, Jerry was quoted as saying, "If you shake the ball vigorously and then place it on the ground, it looks like a Mexican jumping bean, which is trying to get away from you. Ever had a Mexican jumping bean?" I know it sounds crazy, but this is the story. And the Bettses found out that the spear had a magnetic field because they put a paper clip to it, and it couldn't come off too easy, but they grab and pull it off. But if you roll the spear around, the magnetic field seemed to get stronger, and after a few minutes of rolling it around, they actually placed a mayonnaise lid on top of it, and they could hardly pull it off. Then I thought, well, maybe it's solar powered because it seemed to be more active when it got direct sunlight. So Terry said, I put the sphere outside in the yard, and almost immediately I could feel a vibration. Good, 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 good vibration. That was Beach Boys, sorry. Wrong state, California. Then I began to hear a humming sound, he said, like a motor off in the distance, coming from the sphere. And it seemed to get a little brighter too. And when I brought the sphere back into the house, it stayed warm for a couple of days. Well, the Jacksonville Journal heard about the sphere, and they sent photojournalist and known skeptic Lon Enger to cover the story. And Lon's famous line was, I'm leery of all this kind of stuff. I've seen it all. Well, Miss Betts said, you won't believe this if you don't see it for yourself. So Miss Betts told him to put the sphere on the floor. He picked it up, put it on the floor. Look, she said, now roll it a little bit. He gave it a little push. It rolled a ways and stopped, and he gave her a look like, so what? Well, Miss Betts said, just wait a minute. It turned by itself, rolled to the right about 4 feet, and then stopped. Then it turned again and rolled to the left about 8 feet, and then made a big arch and came right back to his feet. Startled, Lon said, I became convinced, and the Journal published a story with pictures. And soon after, the Betts home was inundated with phone calls. Everybody and his brother wanted to see the sphere. The previously quiet home was transformed into a place where the telephone rang constantly at all hours of the day and night. Mrs. Betts said, we came to Fort George Island to get away, to a serene atmosphere. Now we can't get away from the telephone. It means nothing for people in the West that it's midnight here, and when the calls from the West stop, people in the East wake up and begin their day. Mrs. Betts said that one call that got their attention came from the United States Navy. They wanted to make sure the sphere was not an unexploded military ordnance. Right. Being that they lived only a few miles away from the Jacksonville Naval Air Station, Mrs. Betts agreed to loan it to the Navy for 2 weeks under one condition. She said, I told them we expect a comprehensive report in 2 weeks, and if it can't be identified as government property, it is to be returned to us. The Navy agreed. The Navy agreed. Following is the account from the Navy spokesman, a CPO Chris Berninger. He said they did measure the sphere at exactly 7.96 inches, about that big, and it weighed 21 and 34 pounds. It could withstand extreme heat and extreme pressure of 120,000 pounds per square inch. That sounds like a lot. He said, our first X-ray attempts got us nowhere, so then they were going to use a more powerful machine and also run a spectrograph test to determine what metal it's made of. There's certainly something odd about it, he said. And according to the spectrograph, the naval-based metallurgist Fred Thomas said it was made of a high stainless steel metal alloy grade 431. Sounds like a Japanese sword to me. Well, despite the Navy's claim that they could successfully excavate the sphere, the Fort Lauderdale News, that's where I used to live, Fort Lauderdale, reported that the Betts family received the sphere back along with a sealed envelope. And inside the envelope, dun, 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 were images of x-rays which showed the entire internal structure of the sphere. The Navy did indeed use a 300 kilovoltage x-ray machine. Wow! It showed 2 items surrounded by a halo of materials and saw that there were 4 magnetic poles. 2 positive, 2 negative. The magnetic fields exhibited varying strengths and formed an unusual pattern. And then the sphere had an outer shell, which is about a half-inch thick. And inside the sphere were different layers of steel of various densities. And at the core of the sphere, which was about the size of an apple, there was a hollow space containing 3 smaller spheres, each with tiny wires attached. Well, that sure got the Betts' curiosity. And some people speculated it was an alien listening device, so they asked the scientific community for help. And what followed next was a media frenzy. One of the many callers was a Dr. Carl Wilson from the Institute of Baton Rouge called Omega 1 Institute. Well, Dr. Wilson spent hours examining the ball at the Betts home and reported that not only did it have a powerful magnetic field, but it also transmitted a radio signal. He found that the sphere contained radioactive elements and believed it defied the laws of physics. And Dr. Wilson confirmed that the exterior was made of stainless steel grade 431. But he also found traces of an extremely heavy but unknown element. Now, a side note about Dr. Wilson. In my research, I couldn't find any evidence that anyone by that name ever even existed, nor the Omega-1 Institute. So that part is a mystery. Some people speculate it might have been a foreign operative gathering intelligence on the subject. Well, the next scientist Brett brought in was a Dr. James Harder, a more recognized person, I might add, director of APRO, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization out of Berkeley, California. And they were known for investigating unexplained aerial phenomena. And by the way, the term unexplained aerial phenomena, UAP, is now the new buzzword replacing UFO. And especially if you watch Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, you will hear it used many times. Well, shockingly, Dr. Harder's amazing discovery of the internal spheres made of material with an atomic number of 140 stunned the scientific world. Why? Because an atomic number is the number of protons in a nucleus of an atom. We all know that from high school chemistry, right? No, some of us had to go look it up. Well, it determines the chemical properties of an element and it places it in the periodic table, which I failed in high school to take. And the highest atomic number known on Earth is element 118. And chemist Richard Feynman argued that the last possible element, that is the element which is the highest possible atomic number, would be element 137. What? I thought we had 140. Well, he says because after 137, the electrons have to orbit around the neutron so fast, it would go faster than the speed of light. That's pretty fast to me. Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know that guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson? He said, we know all the known elements of Earth and all the elements across the universe. There are no more elements to discover. So much for Neil's controversy. So the element found in the sphere does not occur on Earth? Well, this led Dr. Harder to wonder if the sphere could be an extraterrestrial or alien listening device. Maybe even a damaged alien probe or anti-gravity device. Well, Dr. J. Allen Hynek gets into the play. You know him, ufologist, astronomer of Northwest Chicago University. He was contacted by the Betts family. Many will recognize Dr. Hynek's name as being a UFO advisor to the United States Air Force in Project Blue Book. We all know Project Blue Book. And Dr. Hynek mentioned that he and Dr. Harder, along with a scientific team, were going to be in New Orleans, LA, Louisiana, the following week for a meeting at the National Enquirer tabloid, which established a $50,000 prize if you could have definitive proof of aliens. Well, he asked the Betts, could you bring the sphere there to be examined? Now, strange as this may sound, or coincidental, after Hynek's call, several men showed up at the Betts' home, claiming to be scientists, and they offered Jerry to pay her $750,000 for that sphere. Wait a minute, $750,000 in 1974? That sounds like an awful lot of money to me in 2025. Well, now the Bettses were really leery. There was something wrong about these guys, and it rubbed Jerry the wrong way. When the men asked to see the sphere, Jerry said, "It's not here," and she turned down that cash offer. Well, apparently the men became agitated, and they were asked to leave. Jerry, already feeling suspicious, did a little research on the men and found out that story was fabricated. Now the family suspected this was a foreign government trying to acquire the sphere. Terry Betts and his sister did drive out from Florida to Baton Rouge to show the team the ball in person. Well, after the scientific inquiry, the results were less than what the Bettses expected. According to the St. Petersburg Independent, Hynek says none of the scientists now think the ball is anything but man-made. Now, none will go so far as to say it's extraterrestrial, he said in an interview. That would be risking their scientific reputations. We all have scientific reputations, don't we? I have one, don't you? Well, there's an additional twist to the tale. Through the Inquirer's switchboard, a call came into Terry, says his mother had had an auto accident. Terry calls home, but there's no answer. Thinking the worst, he flew back to Florida immediately, leaving the sphere in the hands of the National Enquirer. When Terry gets home, his mother's fine, was not involved in any accident. Now Jerry's thinking, this sounds fishy. Go back and bring the sphere back home. So Terry arrives back at the Enquirer, demanding the return of the sphere. We don't have it. What? We don't have it. What do you mean you don't have it? I left it with you. Well, the UFO panel wanted it to run further tests at the naval base, so we gave it to them. Oh, you can imagine how upset Terry is. He goes to the base. Guess what? They won't let him in. We're running more tests, and you're not allowed to look at it. You know, you can have it when we're done. Well, after some back and forth and arguing at the gate and this and that, they finally give the sphere back to Terry. Well, apparently the news media had heard about him going over there and the Navy having it, and they show up, and they said, can you show us the sphere? So he pulls it out. Sure, watch. What does it do? It rolls by itself. He puts it on the ground. Nothing happens. He pushes it. Nothing happens. No, it's not doing anything. Well, Terry picks up the ball, goes home. And when he gets home, the vets notice that the sphere actually looks different. It now had a seam where there wasn't one before. Well, Jerry had the sphere re-examined and re-x-rayed. Now gone are the 4 magnetic poles and the small interior spheres. And Jerry proclaimed, this is not our sphere. Dr. Harder warned us. He said not to trust Hynek. And Hynek from Project Blue Book. I wouldn't trust him either. Oh, I didn't say that. Hynek switched spheres, she said. The thought that maybe Hynek had something to do with the sphere being replaced sounds suspicious, right? Well, here's some information I found on the internet that has that same kind of vibe. Supposedly, Dr. Hynek's son, Paul Hynek, and he, by the way, he's a movie producer. He was involved in making Avatar, Lord of the Rings, Planet of the Apes, and he was a consultant to the History Channel's Project Blue Book, you know, the fictional adaptation of his father's case. Well, he said after his father died, one of the possessions found in Dr. Hynek's library was a silver sphere. And that according to Paul, their father said it was part of an investigation of a UFO case in Florida. Now, I tried to validate this piece of trivia and found no reliable source for the quote. So, well, sad to say that after this incident, Sabet sold her house and was later acquired by the National Park Service and is currently in a state of despair. They left the island. Bink, gone. So over time, the story faded from the headlines. Where's the Bet Spear now? Some believe it's still with the family. Now, I'm sure many of you have questions like I do about all this. Like, for one, how did the ball come to be in Fort George Island in the first place? Well, this story goes that Brian Dunning of Skeptoid, a Coca-Cola delivery man, saw similar looking spheres in a sculpture outside a hotel managed by artist James Durling Jones in Taos, New Mexico. Far away place from Florida, wouldn't you say? So he called Durling Jones' attention to the newspaper articles about the Bet sphere. Soon reporters were calling him to ask about the 8-inch stainless steel globes. It turns out he had several sculptures that use them, including a kinetic sculpture using one as a pendulum. Bing, bing, story goes from left, story goes from right, story goes from left, oh, let me get back to the story. Durling Jones said he made a run a few years back in his Volkswagen bus, collecting scrap metal for his sculptures. A friend had supplied him with several balls from large industrial ball check valves at his company. In 2 sizes, some 8-inch balls weighing 22 pounds and some 10-inch balls weighing about 70 pounds. That's some big balls. Having no room left inside his VW bus, he put the balls on top of the luggage rack on top. He drove through the Jacksonville area around Easter time of 1971 when a few of the balls rolled off the luggage rack and were lost. So then I guess the sphere just sat there for 3 years until the Betses happened along, right? Well, Durling Jones even explained the rattling noise noted by Hynek. He said the rattling comes from trying to patch the sphere. The company drills the spears and re-welds them before machining them again. Sometimes some of the milling or drilling chips drop inside. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. You buy that one? I don't. Well, seeing this reported in the paper, Robert Edwards, president of a Jacksonville, Florida equipment supply company, he picks up the phone. He says, yo, he calls a UPI reporter. He said, I got some brand new stainless balls right here in my shop, manufactured by Bell and Howell out of Connecticut. Well, Edwards and the reporter come over, they pull out a box, he uncrapes it, they weigh it, they measure it, found out it was 8 inches. It weighed 21 pounds, exactly the same as the vet spear. Now, Robert Edwards says, I'm not saying that this thing didn't come from outer space because I've never seen it. But all I'm saying is that the physical description matches the exact type of ball valve we have in stock. Well, in my research, I found a couple of problems with it being from a valve. First, there's only one factory in the whole island, and that's a paper mill. And the valves that they use only weigh 7 or 8 pounds. And even if Bet's spear also weighs 21 pounds, the spear was found in the woods about a mile away from the nearest road. Now, even if the spear is capable of moving on its own, how would a spear roll for a mile in the woods? Okay. Many eyewitnesses insisted the spear displayed behaviors that defied conventional physics. So why, for instance, did the spear appear to resist falling off surfaces where one would expect it to roll off? You push it one way, it's going to fall off. No, it gets to the edge, it comes right back. Whoa. Why did its movements become more pronounced or erratic when exposed to direct sunlight? Was the spear really taken by the Navy or Dr. Hynek? We may never know. What do you think? I did my research. Do yours and put your comments below so we can study this out together and maybe we can find what happened to the Bet's spear. Don't forget, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.